There is a particular kind of quiet in a hospital room at 3 in the morning. Not peace. Just machines, doing the breathing you can't manage on your own, and a clock on the wall you can't read because your eyes won't hold still. On the night of February 20th, I was in bed 2 of room 312 at Parkview Regional in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with a fresh stent in my heart and enough sedative in my blood that I couldn't have told you my own middle name. And 19 miles away, at a kitchen table I bought in 1994, my wife of 40 years sat and watched her son sign my name to a document that gave him everything I had ever built. She didn't stop him. She handed him the pen. Welcome to Dark Dad's Revenge. Pull up a chair, get your coffee, and sit with me a while. This one takes some telling. If you've got a story like mine, put it in the comments. Hit that like button, and subscribe if you haven't yet. It helps more than you know. Here, let me back up. My name is Walter Kessler. I'm 66 years old. I've spent 44 of those years with my hands inside engines, small block Chevys, mostly, though I'll take anything with a carburetor and a grudge. I own a shop on Wells Street with a cracked concrete floor and a coffee maker older than my marriage. Every spring since 1998 I've coached Babe Ruth League Baseball at Frank Park, and I have never once made a kid run laps for striking out. I live in a 3-bedroom ranch on Vance Avenue with a garage I finished myself and a maple tree in the front yard that I planted the year my daughter was born. I'm not a complicated man. And that's not humility talking, that's the confession. Because here's my flaw, and I've had a long time to look at it: I don't ask questions I don't want the answer to. I never have. Somebody hands me a story that's a little too smooth, a little too convenient, and I take it, because taking it is easier than the alternative. I called that being easygoing for 40 years. It wasn't. It was cowardice with good manners. I met Diane in October of 1984 at Cindy's Diner downtown, the little one with 15 stools and no tables. She was 2 seats down from me eating pie for dinner, and she had a laugh that made the cook look up. She was 26. She had a 4-year-old son named Bryce and a husband who had been gone 11 months and wasn't coming back. We married in June of 1986. I want you to understand something about that boy. I did not marry Diane and tolerate her son. I took him. Completely. Without question, without condition, without a single day of keeping score. I taught Bryce to ride a bike on Rue de Sille Boulevard. I sat in the 3rd row of the Northrop High School auditorium in 1998 and clapped until my hands hurt, and I was the only man in that row without a camera because I was too busy watching. I paid for his first car, a 92 Cavalier, red, $1,400, and I paid for the transmission when he burned it out 4 months later. I co-signed an apartment lease for him in 2006. I bailed him out in 2011 for something I still won't say out loud on the internet, and I never told his mother, and I never told him what it cost me. Never once did that boy call me dad. Not once in 40 years. Walt. Always Walt. I told myself that was fine. I told myself a lot of things. Diane and I also had a daughter, Kayla, born in 1989. She's an ICU nurse in Indianapolis now, and she got the good parts of both of us, God knows how. 40 years I provided. That's the word Diane always used, Walt provides. Said like a compliment. I never heard the other thing in it until much later, and by then it was too late to unhear. Tuesday, February 11th, 5:52 in the morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when it felt like somebody parked a truck on my sternum. I remember the mug going into the sink. I remember Diane's voice from the hallway, saying my name twice. The second time was louder. Widowmaker, they called it. Left anterior descending artery, 95% blocked. I coded once in the ambulance on Anthony Boulevard and once more in the cath lab. They put a stent in that morning and told me they'd have to go back in for a second one on the 20th, once my heart settled. I spent 11 days in that hospital. 11 days, and I have maybe 4 of them in any real order. Diane came every day. She brought me my reading glasses and my own pillow and a paperback I never opened. She held my hand and cried in the doorway where she thought I couldn't see. And I lay there in that bed, doped to the ceiling, thinking I was the luckiest man in Allen County. Thursday, February 20th, 1:47 in the afternoon, they wheeled me into the cath lab for the second stent. Midazolam and fentanyl. I was fully under, until 3:20. At 2:15 that same afternoon, at my kitchen table on Vance Avenue, a mobile notary named Denise Prater watched a man sign Walter J. Kessler on a new last will and testament, a durable power of attorney, and a quitclaim deed on the shop. My wife made her a cup of coffee. Bryce's girlfriend signed as a witness. I didn't find out for 41 days. Here's how it came apart, and I want you to notice how small it was. April 2nd. I'm home, moving slow, 60 days of no lifting, going through the mail because it's the only useful thing a man in my condition can do. And in the stack is a visa statement. Joint account. And there it is, February 20th, $450, Mobile Notary Services of Allen County. $450. On the day I was on a table with a wire in my heart. I sat there in my own kitchen and I did not say a word. Not to Diane, who was 12 feet away loading the dishwasher and humming. Not to anybody. I took a photograph of that statement with my phone, and I put the mail back in the pile exactly the way I found it. That's the moment I want you to remember. Not because I was clever. Because I was afraid. 40 years of not asking questions, and my hands were shaking so bad I had to take the picture twice. Over the next 9 days, I looked. Quietly. Slowly. Like a man cleaning a wound. I found a home equity line of credit against my house, opened in November, with $148,000 drawn on it. I never signed for it. I found that Bryce, 46 years old, 3 jobs in 4 years, had bought an F-250 Platinum in December, $79,000, and he'd told his mother he got a bonus. I found that the utility bill for a storage unit in New Haven had been coming out of our account since August. I found 9 text messages on Diane's tablet, which sits on the counter, which she has never locked in her life, in a thread with her son. One of them said, "Once it's signed, we don't have to worry about him doing something stupid with the shop." Something stupid. With the shop. That I built. In 1981. Before either of them knew my name. And Diane's reply. 6 words. Just do it while he's under. I read that message 11 times. And I want to be very precise about what I felt, because people expect rage and I want to tell the truth. It wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't even shock. It was recognition. Like meeting somebody you've been introduced to before and finally getting the name right. The next morning I drove to the shop at 6:15 and Ray Muncie was already there, because Ray has been at that shop before me every day since 1994. Ray is 71. He has one good knee, a lung full of 40 years of brake dust, and the plainest conscience of any man I have ever known. I put my phone on the workbench and I showed him. He read it twice. He set the phone down. He wiped his hands on the rag in his back pocket, which is what Ray does instead of swearing. Then he said, "Walt, we're calling Gwen. Today. Not tomorrow. Today." He didn't hedge. He didn't say maybe there's an explanation. He didn't ask me if I was sure, or tell me families are complicated, or suggest I sleep on it. 60 seconds, and that man knew right from wrong and put himself on the right side of it, and then he drove me there himself because I wasn't supposed to be driving yet. I've been thinking about that a lot since. It doesn't take a big man to do the right thing. It takes about a minute. If you've been listening for a while, do us one quick favor. Subscribe, it costs you nothing and it means everything to us. Hit that like button and drop your thoughts in the comments. Now let me tell you what we did. Gwendolyn Foster has an estate practice on East Berry Street, 3rd floor, no elevator, which tells you something about her clientele and something about her. She's 58. She listened to the whole thing without interrupting once, and when I was done she asked me exactly one question. "Mr. Kessler, what time did they put you under on February 20th? I told her 1:47. She wrote it down, and she underlined it, and she said, "Then we don't need to prove they lied. We need to prove you weren't in the room." Those are very different jobs, and the second one is easy. That was the turn. Right there, in a chair with a bad spring in it. I stopped being a man something was happening to. Now, the mechanism. And I'll be honest with you, this part is boring. It's supposed to be. That's the whole secret. Rage is loud and it's fast and it accomplishes exactly nothing. Patience is slow and quiet and it takes everything from you. It took us 91 days. First, my medical records. A night nurse named Tanya Boyd, 34, works 412s, drinks Mountain Dew like it's water, was the one who told me how. She said, "Mr. Kessler, those are your records. Health Information Management, first floor, fill out the form, they have to give them to you." Cost me $22 in 8 days. What came back was a cath lab log with the times printed on it in plain black ink. Sedation started 1:47 p.m. Procedure ended 3:20 p.m. Patient not responsive to verbal cues at 2:15 p.m. Second, the Notary Journal. In Indiana, a notary keeps a record. Gwen subpoenaed it. Denise Prater's own handwriting, her own book, February 20th, 2:15 p.m., 3841, Vance Avenue, signer Walter J. Kessler, identification driver's license. My driver's license was in my wallet, in a plastic bag, in a locker on the 3rd floor of Parkview Regional. It had my wife's initials on the intake form where she signed for my belongings. Third, a forensic document examiner out of Indianapolis named Marcus Ivy. $2,800. He took 14 samples of my real signature going back to 1987 and he wrote a report that used the phrase "not consistent with the known writer" 9 times. Fourth, the bank. Every draw on that HELOC, 22 transactions, $148,000, and $61,000 of it landed in an account with Bryce's name on it in the first 30 days. And through all 91 days of it, I went home every night and I ate dinner across from my wife and I said, "Long day." I mowed the lawn. I coached the 14U team on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I said good morning. I said good night. Was that hard? It was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life, and I've been dead twice. But I want you to understand something, and it's the only advice I've got. The moment I raised my voice, they'd have known. The moment they knew, the money moves and the story changes and the paper disappears. My silence wasn't weakness. For 91 days, my silence was the only weapon I had, and I held it like a man holds a hot pan, because I had to, and because setting it down would cost me more. They thought I was quiet because I was beaten. I was quiet because I was aiming. July 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, Allen County Superior Court. It went the way Gwen said it would, which is to say it went slow and it went all the way to the floor. The will was voided. The power of attorney was voided. The quitclaim on the shop was voided, and the shop stayed mine, where it has been since 1981. Denise Prater surrendered her notary commission and told the prosecutor everything, because a $450 job is not worth a felony, and she figured that out in about 9 minutes. Bryce was charged with forgery and theft. He pleaded out in November. 18 months, served 7, plus restitution of $211,400 that he will be paying at $340 a month until he is 91 years old. The house on Vance Avenue sold in March for $268,000. The HELOC came off the top. What was left, we split, and Diane's half went almost entirely to her son's attorney and her son's restitution, because that's who she is. That was always who she is. No shouting. No blood. Nothing you couldn't photocopy. I saw her one more time, on the last day, in the empty house. She was standing in the kitchen where the table used to be, and she asked me to write a letter to the judge. For Bryce. She said, "You're the only one he'll listen to." 40 years, and that was the first time she ever said that. I want to tell you I felt something. I stood in that room and I looked at the woman I'd handed my entire life to, and I waited for the anger, and it didn't come. There was nothing left to protect. Not the marriage, not the house, not the version of her I'd been carrying around in my head since a diner in 1984. It was all already gone. And a man with nothing left to protect doesn't need to raise his voice. So I didn't. I said, "Diane, I've written his name on a lot of things. checks, bail, a lease, a cosign. 40 years of my name doing the heavy lifting for that boy. She said, then one more won't kill you. And I said, no. But it'd finally kill me. She started to cry then. Not for me. I watched her face and I knew exactly what was in it, not guilt, not shame. Inconvenience. That's her. That was always her. I picked up my toolbox and I walked out to the truck and I drove to the shop, and Ray had the coffee on. I'm 66 years old. I live in a 2-bedroom over on Oakdale now. Kayla calls on Sundays. The maple tree I planted is somebody else's problem. And I sleep, I want you to know this, I sleep like a stone. 40 years, that woman watched me sign my name. She knew the loop in the W. She knew where the pen dragged. She could have drawn it in her sleep, and near enough, she let somebody try. She knew my signature down to the last letter. She never once knew the hand it came from. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of Dad's Raw Revenge. I'll see you on the next.